Good afternoon. This is Sandra Sheffer, host of Racing the Races. I have the opportunity today to speak to County Court Judge candidate for Group 10, Woody Clermont. It's going to be the only judge race, the Broward County judge race that's on the ballot. This is a nonpartisan, non-political conversation. I just want to introduce the people to a person that's running for judge and some of the things that you should take into consideration when you're making a decision on who it is that you want to put on the bench. So Woody Clermont is going to give us a little bit and talk about his experience and how is it that he got to this position and made a decision to go ahead and run for judge. So again, Sandra Sheffer, host of Race of Races. Today we're talking to a judicial candidate. So there'll be no party politics talking because this is a nonpartisan seat. And so Woody, introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Thank you, Sandra. It's wonderful to be on here. Definitely. My name is Woody Clermont. I am running for County Court Judge in Group 10. This is a runoff election. There were previously 3 candidates, and one of the candidates was eliminated. That's actually Alex Ariaza, who you can see over my shoulder behind me, who has actually now endorsed me in the race against my opponent. I originally from Brooklyn, New York, grew up in New York City, and I went to college upstate New York in Binghamton University, and then I went to law school in Coral Gables with the University of Miami School of Law. Go Canes! And of course, I've been admitted to a Florida bar.
Member of Gator Nation, and I'm not going to talk about that game with you, okay?
Well, I mean, I understand we can't all go to the best school, but either way.
In sports, not academics.
Oh man,
go ahead.
But I was admitted to the Florida bar in 2004, and I also been admitted to the New Jersey bar as well as the New York bar as well. In terms of my employment background, I actually became a lawyer later in life. I actually worked for my first 10 years in the insurance industry. And then I went to law school at night because I was married with several children. I and my wife had at the time, but unfortunately we got divorced when I was in the middle of law school. So that was kind of a little hectic, but I managed to make it through, although I ended up having to finish law school being a single parent, raising my daughter. In fact, my pride and joy, Nubia.
Yeah, we commend you for that, right? A lot of us understand that single parent life. That tag is usually associated with women, but there are dads that are out there doing that good work, raising their children, and doing a very good job at that. So that's commendable, and I'm sure your daughter's happy that she had an opportunity to have you in her life, and I really believe you probably did a very good job of raising her.
Absolutely, it was always a joy every day that I got to raise her. She's actually now 27 years old and married and living off in Winter Haven, Florida. But nonetheless, I was there for a lot of her life. I always told her that I would always be the parent that would be there for her. I would never abandon her, that I love her very much. And she's one of my biggest #1 supporters for this race, as she's always constantly, even though she doesn't necessarily live in Broward County anymore, she's always left and right, vote for my dad, vote for my dad. Any of her old friends that were out here in Broward County, because she used to go to high school at McFadder, actually. McFadder has a high school magnet program that they contract with Broward County Schools. And it's actually been an A-rated for many years and also was a Blue Ribbon School of Excellence.
All right. So that's great stuff. Great stuff.
Because
raising children. And
I couldn't let her go to a school that I didn't approve of. Like I went to the school board and I raised my voice and said, you better get my daughter the best school out here, because, I would have loved for her to go to Nova High School, but McFadder was actually a pretty good school as well. And she has a lot of her classmates that she still talks to, and she lets them know, hey, my dad is on the ballot. Please vote for him. He's the best guy in the race. I also worked for many years as a prosecutor with the state attorney's office for Miami-Dade County, Kathy Fernandez-Rundle being the state attorney for that office. I prosecuted cases for 5 years straight, way from the cases of, say, like DUI and battery, all the way up to murder cases. I actually did take several cases to trial. I got convictions on my cases because these were very serious cases in the community that had to be taken seriously, because obviously, people don't want to have a community where, drug dealers and murderers are on the loose and causing all kinds of havoc. So I did my job very well, but eventually I moved on to work as a staff attorney with the court system itself. I did that for 11 years, working for the Miami-Dade court system itself. I served under two different chief judges. First was Bertila Soto, and then the other was Nushin Saifi as well. And so I worked, hand in hand with judges behind the scenes, helping them with their hearings, helping them with their trials, even in cases involving the death penalty and eventually death warrant, which is actually the final stage when the governor signs off that, the person's finally to be executed. So I did a lot of work in that division and also with complex business litigation as well. And I received actually awards from the circuit for the work that I did there. And a lot of the judges that I interacted with, they said, you know what, Woody, you're a bright guy. You have produced some fine work in terms of legal research, legal analysis, helping us draft proposed orders and opinions. Eventually, some of them just started saying, you know what, you need to be up here. You need to be out here being a judge yourself because you understand what it takes and you understand all of the mechanics and the logistics behind the scenes of what it really takes to be a community servant, what it takes to really understand the powerful role of a judge, because it takes a lot of wisdom, it takes a lot of discernment, because we are dealing with people's lives, whether it's civil, family, criminal, and the like. Everything that a judge does, it can be very powerful. And so you want to have the person with the most wisdom and education and experience handling something like that. You don't want to necessarily just give that to someone who, they're very young and they're inexperienced, and then they do things that might destroy communities.
Right. And, and then judges also don't want their cases to come back. When issues come back on appeal, that's usually problematic. And, and if a judge doesn't have the type of experience or content knowledge or subject matter knowledge, in order to do that, you can run into those problems. I hear that you've done a lot of work in Miami-Dade County, and you're running for a position in Broward County. So tell us what that's about.
I mean, it's a funny thing, because it's not for lack of trying. I don't know why I never worked in Broward County sooner, but as it were, a lot of people became to know me more in Miami-Dade County from my legal acumen and experience. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't as much a Broward County resident as everyone else. As I was telling you earlier, I was raising my daughter in Broward County, which means I had to go to all of her recitals. I had to go to her plays. I had to interact with her and her friends and my neighbors. And so I've been very much a part of Broward County all along.
How many years have you lived in Broward
as well
County?
To help people in Broward County. I'm working with Newmont Olive Baptist Church. We have like a prison ministry. And so I actually take time out every week to go to the main Broward jail, as well as the Conti jail facility in Pompano, to speak with young men about the Word of God and to give them some hope and some solace, and to let them know that, that God loves all of us, deep down inside, because each and every one of us, God doesn't necessarily always say, I'm going to call the qualified. I'm going to call the people who are perfect, who never sin, who never get anything right. If we learn anything from Jesus' experience, we learned that he actually dealt with people that had issues. And he never once turned his back on any of them, because as we know, we all can be prone to mistakes and sin and things like that. And so I just wanted to be there as a guidance to these young men. They appreciate me when I come out every week and give them Bible study lessons on wonderful things that are in the Word of God. I also
okay. I don't mean to interrupt you. So public service is definitely something that's important. But I did ask, how many years have you been living in work and providing service in Broward County?
Well, I until recently, like this year, I've never actually officially worked in Broward County.
No, not work. I'm talking about how long did you live? Have you been a resident of Broward County? That's the question that I'm asking.
Yes, I understand. I actually first came to Broward County in 1993 when I was invited here to come with my sister who lived in Hollywood, Florida. And then I've gone back and forth. Sometimes I've lived in Dade, sometimes I live in Broward County. But for the most part, I stuck with Broward County because when I was deciding for a place that I wanted to raise my daughter, I then bought a condominium in Davie, Florida. So from 2007 to now, I believe that's 17 years I've been a resident of Broward County, Florida.
And have you done any community service in Broward County? And if so, with what organizations?
Well, of course, as I was mentioning to you earlier, I'm doing community service through the church. I also have been with Big Brothers and Big Sisters. I've been working with them as well with different children that they assign me from the foster care system that I can be a mentor or guide to them. I also have been over the years participating in I believe it's Hands on Broward is the name of the organization. And they give you different assignments that you can do. You go on and you see, which particular organizations in the community need help with certain things. Like maybe someone needs help, handing out some bread or serving some soup, or someone needs help maybe cleaning up an area that has like old books or something that's in disarray. And so taking odd jobs over the years with Hands on Broward, I was also able to do community service in that way. In addition, I believe, what was it exactly?
I believe you're a member of one of the Divine Nine organizations, and there's some work that that you do through your organization.
But I don't want to misspeak and say that I've done community service with that organization in Broward, because actually I've done quite a number of things. Number one is I am actually affiliated with the Sigma Alpha Omegas in Miami, and I haven't transferred to any local Broward chapter from that time. So I've been working, the boss list there is Khalid Mahmood, and I've also worked with Anthony Britt there as well, who's also an attorney. And so, and also I have done stuff with my alumni chapter as well, because during the time of COVID, they needed some help with alumni work. So I helped coordinate different projects with my alumni chapter back in Binghamton, New York, where brothers went out into the community and we did things in the schools where we would have like little contests and we would offer different prizes. And that was in the name of a deceased brother named Roland, who we would have these contests and they would have to do video essays and they would have to do different things that we would basically judge, and we would try to award and encourage kids based on their conduct. We also used to do Toys for Tots in Binghamton as well, making sure that sufficient money would get to them so that the kids could have a good Christmas. And also, I also did a fundraiser, I believe, through that chapter for the Haitian earthquake a few years ago, where we gave that money to the IET Community Trust.
Okay. Yeah, no. So service is service, right? So sometimes you can't always do your service in the county that you live in, but it's important to know that you understand that service is important. I do some things too. Sometimes I do service in Broward County. I did a lot of work in Overtown in Miami because I grew up in Miami, went to school there. So I still have a lot of connection there. So, and I've done stuff in Palm Beach County too. So it's just that we want to know that not only are you're taking from the community, that you're also giving back in some sort of ways, and whether or not it's Broward County or Miami-Dade County, all of the service is important.
Absolutely. I mean, the name of the game is to be a public servant. So, in other words, you have to really look at the community as a whole, the community you live in, other communities, and just to see how you can be of greatest help to humanity. And that's been something I've always been doing over the years, is wherever I can get involved, I do things. I may not always necessarily be, working up the street or down the corner, but I've always been actively involved in trying to do the best we can to make sure that different organizations, receive necessary help, receive necessary funding, and that, we are of service to the communities around us.
Thank you. So you're running for judge. And so one of the things that I know that's important and that people would want to know is, like, what is your judicial philosophy? Like, what is it that you think when a person walks into the courtroom, what should they expect from the judge in that instance? Whether you're the defendant or the family member of a defendant, or you're the victim, what is it that you want those individuals that's all part of that courtroom to feel with you being a judge in that room?
Absolutely. I mean, when people walk into the courtroom, it's about due process. These are important words, because due process, not giving due process is how judges get into a lot of trouble. In other words, if you make some sort of ruling and you don't give people an opportunity to express their point of view, to present their evidence, to make their case, that becomes a big problem. Like I remember a few years ago, this one judge got himself into a lot of trouble because he was over domestic violence cases. And I don't think he, in his heart, really understood, how to handle domestic violence cases. He actually kind of looked down on it. And so as a result, and I think this was further upstate, but nonetheless, you would have people who were battered, people who had been in these violent situations and who were like trying to get injunctions, or maybe they're being stalked, trying to get restraining orders and stay away orders. And this judge just absolutely seemed to hate his job. So people would come before him and he would say, okay, what are we doing here? And they'd be like, I don't know, Judge. I've never been in court like this. I've never, well, maybe you should have had an attorney. Maybe you should, why would you walk into court, without an attorney? Would you fix your car without a mechanic? Like, what are you doing here? And so the person's just like, well, I know that I had something happen to me, and I would like to get a restraining order. Okay, well, where's your evidence? I don't really know how evidence works. Well, I'm not here to educate you on the legal system, so I guess your case would be dismissed. And so he was doing this routinely on case after case after case. And so finally, some people made the right complaints to the right place, which is the Judicial Qualifications Commission, which reviews whether or not judges are performing their duties properly. And they reviewed it, and then they sent it up to the Florida Supreme Court. And so they made a collective determination that this was totally inappropriate. Yes, judges are not here to give legal advice. Yes, clerks are not here to give legal advice, or bailiffs or JAs are not here to give legal advice. But that doesn't mean you can't at least have some amount of decency to offer people an opportunity to present their case. He could have just said, well, look, ma'am, I'm going to put you under oath. You have you raise your right hand, swear to tell the truth or affirm to tell the truth, and tell me your story. Tell me what happened. Tell me why we're here. This judge was not doing that. This judge was intentionally avoiding that because he really just didn't want to deal with the case. He thought most of them were false anyway, and he would just dismiss them, not once giving the litigant even an inkling of what they needed to do. And so that was found to be inappropriate, and he was definitely suspended and reprimanded for that.
And there's one thing to give legal advice, and there's another thing to just explain what's happening in the courtroom, right?
Absolutely.
And I've been in courtroom where judges, before they start everything, once the docket is started, before they even call like the first person that's on the docket to come, they're like, this court, this is what it's for. We're here to get restraining order. This is the process. Both people get an opportunity to respond. If you want additional time to get an attorney, you can, so they at least explain to you what's going on. So, in that instance, even if it's one thing to give legal advice, like you said, and there's another thing that you can explain what's happening in the room. Because even you have attorneys, even like newer attorneys, when they go in, they don't necessarily understand all the procedural stuff. You may understand the law, but you may not necessarily understand all of the procedural stuff. And particularly when you have a pro se litigant, I would say that it's even more important that the judge makes sure that that person's rights are intact and they don't waive them because they don't understand what it is that's going on.
I absolutely agree with that, because every judge can be different on how they run their courtrooms. That's why it's always important for judges to have orders that basically inform everyone when they're coming into a courtroom what is expected of them, what will happen. So they might say, okay, you know what, if you're going to raise this kind of motion at this particular time, I'm going to need that to be done 2 weeks in advance of the hearing date or something to that effect, to promote some sort of decorum. But you need to give notice. You're not giving any kind of notice. You're not giving any kind of indication or instructions. Then as a judge, you're basically saying, I don't really like doing my job. I don't really like dealing with people. And therefore, I'm not going to help them, whether they're pro se, whether they're an attorney. You just come in the courtroom and you just feel that the judge has a very poor temperament. And you need judges that have a good temperament because, we're all in this together. We're all working together. The system does not revolve around the judge. The judge is the servant of the system. The judge is here to provide a service to the community. And so the judge's first concern should be the community. Yeah. Any person that would walk in a courtroom that I would be in would know from the get-go that it doesn't matter what gender you are, doesn't matter what race you are, doesn't matter what ethnicity you are, what walk of life you came from, what your training is. Everyone must be treated equally and fairly, and judges must be patient. They can't just fly off the handle and just start sanctioning people and holding people in contempt. You have to have an incredible amount of patience, and you have to try to work with people. You have to have that attitude that you're not going to just put people in a bad situation. There's some judges that, if I can tell you a story real quick. I remember one time I was preparing for an Arthur hearing on a murder case. And so I had been scheduled to start my Arthur hearing at 1:00, but the judge overbooked. And so this judge had a hearing from just before 1:00 that still had not resolved, and it was going longer than expected. Some sort of a competency hearing. So I'm sitting there patiently with my witness and waiting and waiting. 2:00 comes, 3:00 comes, nothing. Then around 3:00, I get a call from my school saying, hey, your daughter, she got injured in a spill at the gym. You need to come and pick her up, and you need to take her probably to a doctor or to the ER to get checked out. And so I try to, see if I can get the judge's attention, but the judge is busy with the hearings. I'm trying to talk to the JA. And the JA is like, well, you don't have permission to leave. And I said, well, ma'am, my daughter's mother doesn't live in this county anymore. I'm her parent. I'm a single parent. And if the school tells me that I need to come pick up my daughter, it's an emergency, no one's going to stop me from doing that. Well, you don't have permission to leave. The judge didn't give you permission to leave. I said, well, I'm going to go take care of my daughter because family first, and she can hold me in contempt when I get back. And that was it. And I left. And so then when I came back the next day, the judge apologized. He said, yeah, my GA spoke out of turn. She should not have been that way with you. We completely understand. I hope your daughter's okay. Everything's fine. We rescheduled the hearing. But, that could have been a situation that could have led to a problem because if the judge had really been as obtuse or not understanding as that judicial assistant was, that would have caused a lot of issues. That's not necessarily fair. There are some emergencies that arise. And so, judges, sometimes they get a little, bent out of shape. Like, wait a minute. Okay, you said you have to be here. Oh, wait, you know what? Let me call here just to make sure you actually have to go there. Because they think sometimes that maybe attorneys want to, deceive them or get out of things. And so they're checking up on them. But really and truly, yes, I understand that aspect of it, but we also have to understand the human aspect of it.
Yeah, so
the judge has to be patient.
So one of the things as officers of the court is that we can't go lying, telling the judge we're going to do one thing and that's not the case, right? So and that's for everybody. That's for the lawyers that are coming in the room. That's for law enforcement that's coming in the room, and that's also for the judges as officers of the courts. What we say is what it is. So hopefully, judges don't have to. That have to be a regular occurrence where the judge have to double check with another officer of the court said, because you're saying these things on the record, you know what I mean? And if that's not what it is, that can potentially put that attorney in a position where they, can get some disciplinary
I
absolutely
agree, because attorneys and officers of the court do have many duties to the judge. I've from my time when I worked in the court system, there was one particular attorney that kept coming in inebriated every morning. And the judges took note of it. And finally, the chief judge had a conversation with him and said, look, we might have to escalate this if you keep doing this. You cannot show up in court inebriated. You're here to represent your client. You're here to represent, being an officer of the court. You're here to represent, that attorneys are held to a certain standard.
Yeah.
And so that continues to be a problem.
I don't think they're able
to the bar.
Yeah, if someone came into court drunk, I don't know if you could let that attorney represent the client. But the interesting thing too, right, is that sometimes addictions are some form of a disability, and so you can't, you have to offer, even if that was reported to the bar, depending on that situation would have to offer some sort of treatment for that individual because of that, right? So we see all these things. It's a stressful job that that we have. There are all kind of things that can go on. So there's definitely a way for the bar to handle that instead of just particularly if they're coming more than often. It seems as though that there's some life stuff going on. So I appreciate that you were able to give the audience a lot of information on your judicial philosophy, what it is that you want to do, and also talk about the range of the types of judges that you can encounter. One that's going to talk crazy to people and not do his job, and then another one that understand that family comes first. They understand that their docket was running behind and you had an emergency and they apologize for that and reschedule the matter, right? We're not going to explain to the people what an author hearing is, because that's not what today is about, right?
Of course.
Now, so in that, so what are the, one of the things that's talked about, right, is like you hear this thing about, you have these progressive, prosecutors or progressive judges that are on the bench. And then in that conversation comes this whole idea about what should we do about cash bail, because of some of the ways that the court system works, it seems as though it's criminalizing poverty, for example, right? Because if you ask somebody that's an hourly wage worker to pay $1,000 bond on something that they may be innocent of, that can be very disruptive to their family. So I don't think that's dealing with a case specifically, but what are your thoughts on trying to find alternative ways, or are there alternative ways in which a judge can probably deal with a person who may not have the economic ability to really maybe post a high bond in a case where we have a presumption of innocence in the court?
Well, I think one of my people that I view as a role model in this regard was actually a Miami-Dade judge by the name of Tom Peterson. Tom Peterson was a real great man. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, but he served as a state attorney. He served as a public defender. He had a lot of different roles, and he did even community prosecution where he used to go out into the community and he would meet with families, and he took that job very seriously. And so you could literally give him a place in Miami-Dade County, tell him about a neighborhood, and he could tell you the people that lived in that part of the neighborhood. And, even when certain defendants would come through and he'd recognize the last name, he would say, oh, tell your aunt Etta Mae that, I said hello, or something like that. And that truly impressed me because he cared a lot about the community now as a judge. And he started a lot of initiative programs. And one of the programs he helped really put forward was pretrial release and other programs like the alternative program as well. And these are programs which focus on less of trying to require defendants to post cash bail based on amounts that might, cause them extreme hardship, and more on, well, let's get folks involved from different providers, whether it be through corrections or maybe a private provider that's contracted with the court system, and they will sit down and they will get all the information from these particular defendants. They will find out, who their parents are, who their immediate family, what are some phone numbers, where, what was their background, what was their history, and with that, they would then work with these defendants and say, you know what, Judge, yes, he's acceptable in our program. We're going to work with him. We're not, he's not going to be required to post a bond or bail, and we will stay on top of him. We will call him regularly to make sure that, he hasn't gone missing or anything that comes up. We know where to find him. We know what neighborhood he's in. We know what people to call in case he goes missing or she goes missing. And so they would stay on top of those cases. And Judge Peterson was a big proponent of that. And I was truly moved by that because I realized that, what, sometimes we have in our Florida Constitution, a presumption of non-monetary release. And so because of that, we can't just take that lightly to think that every case deserves cash bail. I mean, there are going to be some defendants that, yes, maybe they have money up the yin-yang, maybe they're drug traffickers, whatever the case may be. But then for the little people, like they say, the homeless people, or the people who are committing very small petty offenses, or even offenses that maybe are, they're felony level, but they're less serious. Like, for example, you could get arrested on a felony for dumping rocks in a backyard or something like that, inappropriate disposal. And that's like a third-degree felony that could get you 5 years in prison. But on a case like that, we could look at these alternatives to say, well, you know what? This person has ties in the community. This person obviously is of modest means. Let's work on ways that will help this person, not just saying, well, you know what? You don't got the money. You got to stay locked up. I'm sorry for you. Like I don't like that personally. But obviously, as a judge, I'm here to enforce the laws. But I'm definitely a proponent of any system that offers non-monetary alternatives.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that. And one of the other things that we're noticing too is that there are a lot of traffic offenses that are criminal offenses in the state of Florida. Not every state is like that, right? Like almost every traffic offense can become a misdemeanor or a felony, from just speeding, right? If you just speed just too fast, it becomes a misdemeanor, right? That is just not an infraction. And then we've also seen how traffic stops become more. Do you have any position or any thoughts on what it is that a judge can do to, about traffic, or is that something more for law enforcement to deal with, and Sheriff Tony or somebody needs to figure out how they can reduce the interaction, or maybe even the legislators can say, you know what, we're not going to criminalize so much traffic, since traffic ends up making so many people end up in a judge's courtroom, whether it's county or circuit.
Well, I would say this, even though I worked primarily in Miami-Dade County, I actually used to follow the situation with traffic in Broward County, that sometimes officers maybe made too many arrests in the area of traffic offenses. That if I want to say I'm remembering correctly, I want to say maybe it was a decade back, there was an individual who was the brother of a Super Bowl, I guess, player, a football player. And he had gotten so many driving while license suspended cases that eventually they charged him with a felony.
The third one is a felony in Florida.
Yeah, when it's like 3 or more times and you have like a certain type of revocation on your record, that can be a felony. Either the 3 times or the designation of the HCO revocation. Either of those can be the basis for a felony. And so this individual had reached that point, and so they gave him some sort of sentence that really was going to be more like maybe a little jail but a lot of probation, that he would be released. But they told him he had to surrender by a certain date, and unfortunately, I guess he got mixed up, and he also realized that the surrender date would fall around the time that his brother was scheduled to play in the Super Bowl. And so he did not turn himself in time. And so when they finally did catch up with him, they said, well, you would have gotten a nice, tiny jail and probationary sentence, but now you didn't come in, 5 years prison. And I just thought that was just devastating. I said, and that's not right. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he shouldn't be held accountable for his irresponsibility. But by the same token, he's saying that, hey, look, I really wanted to see my brother in the Super Bowl. I didn't want to miss it. I don't think I would have been able to watch it from jail or whatever the case may be. I don't even know. I know in some of the jails that I visit, I do see televisions in there, but I don't know what the circumstances were with him going off to prison, whether he would have been able to see the game. But I just felt that the judge kind of was a little too heavy-handed in that particular case, and I didn't care for it. And Broward started to attract that kind of reputation. So I remember at one point, the issue was that even if you, say, get a ticket, like a regular ticket for careless driving or, failure to yield on right-of-way, something like that, improper turn, just waiting 30 days and not doing anything on a ticket like that will automatically subject you to a D6 suspension.
Yes.
And so from there, the next time they catch you, then that can become a driving while license suspended. So if I remember correctly, Broward, at the rate they were going back then, I think they had the highest volume of those cases in the state. And people were saying, why is that? Why is Broward the leader? They're not even the largest county. Miami-Dade is the largest county. So why is the Broward the leader in that? So eventually someone went to the legislature and said, well, yes, we can understand if it's other types of suspensions, like maybe if you steal, there is a theft suspension, or if you don't pay your child support, there's a child support suspension, other kinds of suspensions that can arise. But they said, but if it's just a 30 days, you missed your hearing and this and that, they said that should not be the basis of giving someone a felony charge. And so that passed in the legislature, and that kind of reduced the number of people going to prison on traffic matters in Broward County, which is just weird, right? Because normally when you try to make laws, you don't make it to target a particular area, but that was the side effect because people noticed that Broward was just getting out of control with that.
It's a lot. And then there was another instance when the case that I thought you were talking about, and I don't know if this one started with traffic, but there was a judge here who had tried to sentence a young man to like 60 years on a violation of probation. And it was so like, people were just like, are you nuts? Like it got NAACP and a whole bunch of different organizations got involved, and he kind of backed up off it, but it cost him, like when it was time to run, they were like, we remember you. And I'm not going to call his name because I don't want to do that. But I remember people actually took notice of that because it was such a high profile type situation that he was trying to sentence somebody to 60 years. And that's one of the on a VOP. And that's one of the reasons why I think I wanted to, have a judicial candidate come on, because people really should get to know the folks that they're voting for and putting them on the bench, because you don't want to put a person on the bench who would be willing to sentence a young person to 60 years on a violation of probation. And it wasn't a serious matter. And because that's really just throwing that person's life away. Like you send somebody to prison for 60 years, the odds of them coming home are very slim because 60 years is a long time.
I won't use the judge's name, but the irony is I got into an argument with him on social media yesterday. And it wasn't even that I'm connected to him somehow. He happened to be connected to someone else that I knew who had commented on the situation of certain immigrants being referred to as eaters of dogs and cats or something like that. And so, which obviously
I'm a descendant of one of them immigrants.
I'm heavily opposed to, as I am a Haitian American myself. And so one of the things that I mentioned in the conversation is that, a lot of times some of the xenophobic anti-immigrant rhetoric that pops up is based on things that are just not factually true in terms of the evidence. So I actually proposed certain studies that have examined it and found that sometimes undocumented immigrants are more afraid of the law and therefore tend to avoid encounters with law enforcement at every particular chance they get, and that the numbers reflect that they actually commit crimes at a rate that's lower than legal aliens or American citizens, which is interesting. And he just went, that's just the same judge on that case that you're talking about. He just went ballistic and he was like, oh no, the gangs are out here and the cartels and we're not safe. And he's just going on and on and on. And I just kept saying, I don't agree. Here's a study. Here's evidence. All you're talking about is anecdotes. And he had no response other than to say, well, you're wrong. They're a danger to our community. We have to get rid of them. And I'm just like, I think you're obfuscating the issues. And I think you need to look at hardcore evidence. But I agree to disagree.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, oftentimes, particularly the immigrants that end up in South Florida, they're coming from countries where you don't want to mess with their police at all, right? Because there's a lot of corruption that they can like harm you, and there's no consequence because it's not like they got like internal affairs that you can go report this officer for abusing you, and they come with that mentality that officers aren't necessarily always there to protect you, right? So as you say, I do agree with you that they avoid it. It's like no one wants to be involved with the police because there's usually no good reason to be involved with the police, because all of their experience is that interaction is because something bad, somebody did someone bad, or you're in trouble. So for them, they would avoid that interaction because they come from countries where law enforcement is just not what it is in the United States. Because we can call the police here to get our cat out of the tree, right? Like on the fire department, you can't do that there, like a lot of the places where they're from. So their relationship is very, very different. And I know the police are doing a lot to try to that's working on their reputation. They have coffee with a cop, and they have all of the police athletic league organizations. So we, Americans have a different relationship with law enforcement because you get to know them and they really do live next door to you, or they're like, somebody but oftentimes in other countries, that's not the relationship that people have with police officers. And in their mind, it's like you're only talking or dealing with them because there's a problem, not because they're your friend,
Absolutely. So, that's why for me, he just kept going on and on about this. And I just said, I'm not seeing it, especially on the studies that I've looked at. And they did a lot of rigorous, robust testing of these concepts, these concepts and principles, that they were looking at a lot of different things, like, oh, maybe we're missing something here, maybe we're missing something here. But it kept coming back that, in fact, with immigrants, they tended to avoid the police as much as possible. In other words, they tended not to get in trouble as much as possible because they want to be here. They, don't get me wrong. I mean, I understand illegal immigration is a problem. I'm not suggesting that we should encourage illegal immigration, but they're here for a reason. They're here to have a chance. They're here to have an opportunity. And the last thing a lot of these folks want to do is mess up that opportunity by getting into something with the law, maybe being caught with drugs, or maybe being caught committing a violent act or domestic violence, something, terrible, that now, you are on their radar. They say, you know what, you're a dangerous person. You don't belong here. You're not even supposed to be here anyway. I don't know how you got in the country. Maybe you snuck across the border or whatever have you, or overstayed a visa. But nonetheless, they're the ones that are like, I just need to stay, whatever, because, I want to really be a part of this country. I don't have the opportunities in my country where I came from that I do here in the US. So I want to make this work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So tell the folks why they should vote for you, and what is it that they should expect in a court ran by Woody Clermont. But I don't know if run is, a courtroom where Woody Clermont presides.
Well, and I don't like to do this to nitpick my opponent, but I just have to, come back to the cold, hard reality of things. The cold, hard reality of things is, as I've told you earlier, I've worked in the field as insurance and other business and corporate matters for 10 years. And then I've been a lawyer for 20 years. So really, you've got a person now who has 30 years of just overall job experience as a whole. I'm 54 years old. My opponent, I believe, is maybe 36 years old or something like that.
You're not gonna do no ageism.
I mean, this is the reality of it, though. This is the reality of it. And I checked, his Florida bar admission date, and he's not yet 10 years. He will turn 10 years in a few days, but he's not yet 10 years. And so whether you look at it from straight up legal experience comparison, I'm 2-1 on him. And if you look at it overall life experience, I'm 3-1 on him. So looking at it from that standpoint, I really would be very wary to have my fate determined by someone who's so young and who's, the majority of his experience, I believe, is, I think he's had 7 years working under his father or something like that, which I don't know. Maybe his father takes really hard cases. Maybe he's assigned really hard cases. But, I could wish that I could work for my dad in his law firm. That would be a great opportunity, but that's not the life I had. As I told you, I literally was raising a family, going to law school at night and raising a daughter, after my divorce, as a single parent. So I didn't have that kind of opportunity. And so here you have this gentleman that, yes, his father is well known in the community, but his father's not the one running for judge. He is. And he's just very young. and he doesn't have a whole lot of experience. I'm not saying he doesn't have a great heart. I don't say he has great temperament to be a judge. But I just think that when we look at the age and we look at the extent of the experience, and I don't even know if he's ever tried a murder case. Like, I've never heard him say that. He'll say he tried life felonies, but I've never heard him say he tried a murder case. And I know I've got twice as many jury trials as he does.
Yes,
so
and I
know it seems really like I'm piling on him, but this is the reality. Is
no, and I understand
someone who really hasn't litigated a whole lot, who's done most of his time in his father's firm, and he's very young, and we're going to say you have the incredible power of a judge. Now go ahead and decide this person's life, whether they should be locked up, whether they should be cash bail, non-cash bail, whether or not that they should have to pay this extreme penalty and have their wages garnished. These are important decisions, and I think age and experience and wisdom is what prevails there. So that's why I believe the people of Broward County should vote for me, because I'm sorry, and that's why my previous opponent, Alex Arriaza, he had 30 years of legal experience. So when he got eliminated, one of the first things he said is you have experience. You have done lots of trials. You've done lots of difficult trials. I'm endorsing you because if I'm going to see someone on the bench, it needs to be someone with the wisdom and experience. And, I love his family. I love him, but I have to go with the more experienced candidate.
And there are certain positions where your intellectual ability can take you as far as you need to go, right? Because to have gone to law school, graduate law school, passed the Florida bar, started practicing, you have to have like some sort of smarts in order for you to be able to do that, right? But in this particular instance, it's not just that, right? Like, experience does matter. A diversity and experience does matter. And there's some things with the law, you just learn it from just experiencing it, right? Because you can't learn it in a book. You're not going to learn it in a book, and you don't get to learn it from just one particular case. So in that instance, I do agree that experience, when you're talking about being a judge, having a diverse group of people that are going to come in front of you, different temperaments, different types of cases, different types of issues, dealing with a whole bunch of different personalities, because you're dealing with defendants, victims, all the lawyers in the room, probation, the jail, and all of these different things. I do think in that instance, I agree with you that experience should win. And again, I joked about ageism. However, when you're talking about someone that's going to be a judge that has to make some very tough decisions, and some of them are going to be very, very tough to the point where it can conflict with your conscience, but you have to do what it is that the law say you'll do. And I hear you when you say experience should win.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, he's a wonderful guy. I have nothing against him. Like I said, he seems sweet. He seems nice. He seems very wonderful. I just think he needs a little more seasoning before he hops in the hot seat.
All right, November 5th. When is the election? Is the last day they can vote for you? I believe early voting starts sometimes like October. I had the date, but I don't.
October 21st to November 3rd.
Okay, October 21st to November 3rd. Early voting. I believe it's going to be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. this time because of the historic nature of the election of the.
Absolutely.
We have presidential election this time, so top of the ticket. And then so last day to vote is November 5th. That's the day everyone talks about. But we encourage folks to early vote vote early. I didn't say often, only early. And definitely request your vote by mail ballots just in case you're unable to go in person, but definitely early vote and make sure you just vote.
I encourage everyone to participate because this is an important election. There are a lot of important people on the ballot, not just my race. And so we need the maximum turnout that we can have. I believe the last time the turnout was only 17%. And we can't have that for November 5th. We need something way better. At least 80% needs to turn out. I know we have like 1.2 million voters in Broward County. So, we need at least probably 800,000, 900,000 people to come out. And so that's a lot of numbers. But like you said, if people are smart about it, if they do the mail-in votes, if they do the early voting, we can take a lot of pressure off of November 5th so that we can get all the ballots counted properly.
And the supervisor of election have, he's made sure that the ballots are going to go out early enough. There's going to be a lot of locations that'll be open, and they will be all from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And remember, during the early voting period, you can vote anywhere in the county. You don't have to go to your precinct.
Absolutely.
You can vote close to your job. Or if you're shopping at the mall and there's a place there, most of the libraries have places. So you can vote anywhere during the early voting period, and it gives there's a lot of flexibility. So take advantage of that.
Absolutely. There are different, community centers, different libraries. Also, Lauderhill Mall, different places all over. And so you have your pick of the litter. I believe it's over 20 something locations that, countywide that you can go to. I know because I had to go out there and put down my sign in every one of them. So
yeah, during the primaries, I think it was like 28 of them. There were 28 sites, and it may be more during the general election.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, during the general election, you got to go to your sign polling place, and so that could literally be like an elementary school or wherever near the town hall or wherever they've set up that particular polling place to be. That you have to follow very strict rules. But like you said, with the early voting, you have your pick of the litter.
Thank you. So last word. I didn't play my intro because again, I said this is a nonpartisan thing. We're not talking any politics. We just wanted to inform you about one of the judicial candidates that was on the ballot. So thank you so much for spending some time and talking with us. And you have the last word.
All right. Well, Broward County, I'm here for you. I think that I've been blessed in my life that I've seen a lot of experiences. And as I was mentioning earlier, I myself have been pulled over by police many times. So I know how important that can be. And I know one time when I tried to have a polite conversation with an officer that he tells me, look, either you're going to do what I say or we're going to cart you off to jail. So I understand the stakes here. And I understand the experiences that we all go through. I've been through it, and I've been surrounded by 6 cop cars with guns pointed and everything. I've never gone to jail or, had a conviction or anything like that. But I have been in those experiences where my heart is pumping and this person may be using an AR-15 or something like that. And like, hey, give me your identification right now. So these are important things that come up because judges have to deal with this every day. They have to look at the totality of the situation. They have to see whether or not, the testimony is credible of the different actors involved. And of course, I can't tell you what I would rule in any given situation because obviously that is not allowed. But I am here to tell you that everyone will have a chance. Everyone will have an opportunity to be heard. Due process will be observed, and that I most definitely have a stake in my community. And I would like to see a community that is for the community. I'm a public servant. I'm here to serve the people. I hope you vote for me on November 5th, 2024 for County Court Judge.
Group 10.
Group 10. The only race left, but yes, if you have to look for a number, Group 10.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you, Sandra. I appreciate it. Thank you for bringing me on your show.